and welcome to Energized Thinking. We are so excited you're here. And my name is Valerie, and I have my lovely co hosts, Courtney Beck and Ambreen Nadeem, and our incredible guest, Dr. Jennifer Fraser. Now, Dr. Jennifer Fraser, she's amazing, you guys. She is an award winning educator and an advocate for anti bullying in all of its settings. She is also the author of the incredible book, The Bullied Brain: Heal Your Scars and Restore Your Health. Dr. Fraser uses neuroscience and evidence based practices to transform the outdated bullying paradigm. Thank you so much for being with us today, Dr. Fraser. It's an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be with you guys.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, part of energized thinking, Jen, is about curiosity, embracing curiosity, embracing critical thinking. And we felt like, as a debut guest, we want to interview experts that really are embracing that. And just your mission is so important. And I would love for you to tell us more about yourself and about your why, and why this subject is so important for everyone, especially as this new school year starts and we're starting to really kind of talk about bullying and all of that again.
Well, the first thing I would say is we, as a society, I think we make a mistake in that we associate bullying with school. Because really the tragedy of it is that children are reflecting back to us our own culture. Bullying is not at all natural to the brain. In fact, our brains from birth are wired for empathy. And empathy, just to remind everybody, empathy is the greatest quality that we have. It is our ability to care about and literally feel and even reflect on a brain level what other people are feeling and thinking and intending. And so when you see a child who's bullying, what you're seeing is a child who has empathy that is being affected in a negative way, almost always by adult behaviors. It could be a sibling, it could be someone closer to their age, but in general, what they're doing is reflecting back adult traumas. And so we live, adults, in a normalized bullying, I call it a paradigm or a framework. We live in a normalized bullying framework, just like back in the day, we used to live in a normalized smoking environment. Smoking was everywhere. Nobody talked about cancer. Nobody looked at x-rays of cancer developing in lungs or lung shadows or any of those things. Smoking was just the thing that people did, and they did it everywhere. They did it at home, they did it at school, they did it at work. Children imitated adults who were smoking. And it's the exact same thing with bullying. Children imitate us, and they learn these behaviors from us that are unnatural to their brains, and they harm one another. And it's tragic. So just as you say, Valerie, school has started, it's on our radar, but really we have to open that lens up, and use our curiosity to ask some courageous questions of, why do we act as if bullying, when we see it in the highest levels of society, the most powerful positions in the world, why do we expect our kids to be any different? They learn to associate bullying behaviors with power just by turning on the internet, just by turning on TV, just by the social media world of incredibly dehumanizing, cruel, unkind onslaught that you just click a button and you're exposed to it in all of its visibility in public. It's public, and leaders do it publicly, and they do it with impunity. So we have a long journey ahead of us to eradicate it, but we have to start with the adults. And then I just want to say one final thing. What I love about your podcast and this idea of energized thinking is we're hitting crisis levels right now in arguably two of our most important sectors, which are healthcare and education, which are being drained of energy. The energy of teachers is being drained. The energy of our nurses and our doctors is being drained right before our very eyes. And this is why energized thinking is going to be a really key component in having conversations on how do we restore energy to our really important workers in society.
Yeah, I love that. I'm actually a great fan of you, Jennifer. As Valerie introduced you, that the moment I know that we met, like there was something that I knew that you are expert on your area, especially the neurosciences, the brain, and I read your book, Bullied Brain. It's amazing, like full of neuroscience facts, and it gives practical solutions. So I love that book. So thank you for actually writing it down. And I'm looking forward to your new book, which is going to be published soon. I'm really looking forward to it. I actually like the fact that you mentioned here about bullying, that it's all about the society. It's not just, you cannot pinpoint only one person here and there. It is all, uh, kind of the entire society has built in this way. But what do you think that how we can actually, find a solution to do that? I know that, if as you mentioned that, when they turn on the TV, they see the same dehumanizing information. So what do you think? What are the ways we can do that?
Yeah, it's such a thank you for all the kind words, Ambreen. And I believe the solution lies in brain science, and the solution
Mm-hmm.
lies in understanding how our nervous systems work. So it is missing education for almost all of us. I certainly, as I was a teacher for 20 years, I'm a researcher, I'm a writer, and I had never really been taught any solid information about the brain. And so I had to do my own research and go and see what all of the experts were saying, and then start to put it into a program to say just exactly what you're saying, Ambreen. Like, okay, we know that all forms of bullying and abuse that don't touch the body, so psychological abuse, emotional abuse, verbal abuse, neglect, emotional neglect, these things, the body is not touched, but the brain and the nervous system and our internal organs are absolutely devastated by these behaviors that, Ambreen, just as we're saying, are normalized. And so really what I think, I'm a big believer in education. That's probably because it's what I've done all my life, but I believe that if people had the knowledge, that the knowledge is power. And so that's why in the bullied brain, and then forthcoming the gaslit brain, I'm really writing about abuse culture. Why does it flourish? Why do we allow it to happen? Why don't we know how much it hurts us? Why, why is my big question. And I feel like brain scans and biomarkers can tell us so much about the invisible world of how environments affect us, how behaviors affect us. If we can see it and visualize it, then we can be much more caring for each other and caring for ourselves. We can understand that it isn't hurt feelings when someone is cruel to you and lacks kindness. It's not an emotional experience. It's a physiological, a body experience, like a harm to your body, and it is a neurological experience. It is physical damage to the brain. It can be seen on brain scans. So as soon as we know that, wait a second, we can see it on brain scans. Just like smoking, the x-ray showed us what was happening to our lungs. We were able to make a way better informed decision. And I think that that's where society is going to make a change, because the vast majority of people in society don't want to hurt people, and they don't want their health seriously compromised. And what most people don't know is when you bully someone else, when you harm them, when you abuse them, when you put them down, even when you emotionally ignore them or you gossip about them, you're hurting your own brain. So there is a no win. There's nothing constructive. It's just damage city. And we need to change that.
Absolutely. And I think what's so interesting, Dr. Fraser, you were speaking not just from the school standpoint of bullying obviously affecting students, whether that's youth into adolescence, but then also in the workplace. And it made me like just to become more interested in, is there any differences from like a psychological standpoint between women and males as to how bullying affects them?
That's a really interesting question. I have not looked at research or seen research that lays out a distinction between a male. I know there is work on male and female bullying, perhaps taking different forms. So, especially with younger males, so like boys, young adults, they might be more physical in the way in which they enact with others, maybe even physically threatening without touching someone. It can be more of a bodily thing. But with women, it's more verbal, it's more emotional, it's social relational. They like to turn another woman against someone in the workplace and create a mobbing effect, which is the word they use a lot and when it happens in the workplace. And they use social relational tools like non-invitation, ignoring, mocking. A woman will speak and they'll act like they didn't speak at all because they're not worthy. These types of more subtle, less physical, that is well documented. Now, to answer your question, does it affect them differently? I'm sure there's people actually, when I think about it, that do that kind of work. I haven't seen it, so I can't speak with any kind of great insight on that question. Sorry.
I think that's amazing. I think, Dr. Fraser, I think that everything that you're doing is so spot on with just what we need to hear in society today. And like you're saying, it's not just at the start of the school year. We need to be doing this throughout the year, throughout age levels. And I purposely and very nervously, I will say, put my glasses on for this interview. And I did that for a reason, because when I was a child, and Jen and I have talked about this, I had a lot of bullying. And in particular was about my hair and about my glasses. And I still, if you could do a brain scan on me right now, I was texting Courtney and Ambreen being like, do I look okay? Is this okay? I get so self-conscious, but there is something in my brain that from that bullying experience, and that's just kind of not necessarily that's just a specific example. It can be anything. And it's so rampant, not only on the school bus, in the classroom, in the workplace, but also on the internet now. It is everywhere, and everyone is getting bullied with whatever their, glasses or hair situation is. It may not be that, whatever it is. And it is impacting it, like you're saying, like with smoking. And I think that, awareness is the first step towards change, but also I love how you kind of talk about the bullier as well, and how that there's hope. What I love so much about your writing and what your work is that you give hope to both the bullied and the bullier. And I think that conversation is so important. And I would love for you to share more about that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good example with the glasses. And by the by, they look fabulous. Your hair is gorgeous. But let me just say, a really good example for people is let's pretend, Valerie, that you were going to school and on your way to school, you burned your hand on the stove. You were 10 years old and you didn't know what was on and you burned your hand. And so when you talk about the wiring in my brain, your brain is never going to let you forget that one, because your brain decides that was actually a risk to your survival. It was so serious that the brain registers it and starts to give it energy, and it starts to wire it in because it wants you to survive more than anything. So let's pretend you grew up and you develop a lot of anxiety. So even now you're a mom, you're going to make dinner, your brain starts flashing and going, Valerie, the stove is dangerous. The stove is dangerous. It's going to burn you. And this is how anxiety can develop, right? So you have anxiety around your glasses. You need to be reassured because it actually threatened your survival as a child. Very early on, we know that the only way we survive is in community. The only way we survive is with connection. And this is why people had such serious mental health responses to COVID. And it's why prisons should never use solitary confinement. It's well documented in the research to do extreme damage to the brain, which automatically does extreme damage to the body because they're inseparable. So back to solutions. What can we do when we are wired in this way? And the answer is a ton of things. The brain is wired to repair and recover. The brain loves to get better. If you are following evidence-based practices grounded in neuroscience and psychology and psychiatry and medicine, as you would know, Valerie, and you would know Ambreen from the psychology, and Courtney, you would know as a professor who specializes in all of the way in which athleticism is entwined and high performance is entwined in healthy brain body. All of us have this great pool of knowledge, and we can draw on what we know, which is that the brain has neuroplasticity, which means it can change. And it changes by environment. So we don't want to be in negative environments. We want to be in supportive, caring, empathic environments. And it also changes based on what we practice. So Valerie, let's use the glasses. What you did was a really smart thing. You put the glasses on and said, you know what? I want to be able to see clearly. And I'm going to check in with two people that I care about and I trust. And I'm going to say to Courtney and Ambreen, do I look good? And they say, yes, you do. You look fabulous. And you know what's most important, Valerie, is that you can see clearly. It really doesn't matter what other people say about you. Your clarity is the most important thing. And that gives you the community, the connection, and the courage to do what is best for you. And replace outdated neural networks from the past, which you can absolutely let go of. So, one of the ways that it's helpful to think about our neural networks is they're like roads. So that back roads. Who am I talking to here? Yeah. Okay, let's just take Valerie's whole concept of the back roads. What you're doing is making one road, the glasses don't look pretty road, and they're going to make people not like me. You can take that road and let it get all overgrown and full of weeds and stones and branches, because you never let yourself go down that path. That back road, you decide very consciously and intentionally to cut that off. I'm no longer using that road. And then your brain is like, whoa, it's so difficult to go down that road. I'm not going to bother. Instead, it says, oh, Valerie has shown me a new road, and she's starting to give it a lot of energy and focus. And that's the road of friendship and caring colleagues. I'm going to take that road. And then your brain starts to get so used to taking that road, it defaults to it, that it starts to myelinate it, which means it takes that neural network and it puts a lot of insulation around it, which means that the speed is so high. Next thing you know, that road becomes a super highway in the brain. So all of us can do this kind of work with habits or behaviors, or even if we hurt other people and we don't want to do it. So as a parent, we don't want to yell at our kids. If we work at it, just like if we were studying violin, studying soccer, studying mathematics, the brain learns by repetition at timed intervals. So if you want to learn something like being more calm and gentle around your children, it's something you can practice. And literally, if we could look inside your brain on a brain scan, we would see it differ. It would be different than when you started the practice. It takes around usually 30 hours or 30 hours or more to actually start to see the change, but the change will be there.
Fascinating. Amazing. It's really fascinating that the way you actually explained it, the kind of, the back road we take usually, it defines, and the more, that path we take, the stronger it gets. So that's the beauty of neuroplasticity. So I just want to ask that, I know that maybe when you were explaining, I could understand very well, especially we can understand very well. But what about now that the school is starting? So how we can actually make our kids understand, because especially when they go to classes, no matter how much you actually tell them about the neuroplasticity, they are still not able to actually practice it very well. Or even, for example, for adults, it's very difficult to actually take control during that situation when the bully comes to you and is harassing you. Maintain our calmness and be able to actually respond to them in a way which doesn't hurt us. So what do you think that how we can tell our children or prepare our kids to face bullying in a way that it doesn't hurt their mind or it doesn't hurt their brains?
Yeah, it's absolutely. So what I think is a really good way to, you can do this with children all the way up to adults. So you say to them, human beings, we are mammals. We are creatures. We are highly organic, natural creatures, and that's how we've been shaped by evolution. Even though we now live many of us in urban centers and with a lot of technology, that doesn't mean that evolution did not shape us as the mammals that we are. So once you start from that place, you can say, okay, well, how do other mammals demonstrate that they've been hurt and that they live in terror and that they are unstable and compromised by what they've been through? And we can't see it because it's inside of them. So we can't see it, but we can look at their behavior. So you say to a child, okay, now let's say you're a mammal, you're as a human being, and you come up and there's a dog. And the dog is snarling and growling, and its tail is straight, and its fur is standing up on end. When you see that dog, you should feel afraid, but much more importantly, you should recognize that that dog comes from abuse. that dog has been hurt so many times that it now believes that you, just a child standing there, are threatening it. You are really making that dog feel so much fear that it is starting to show you a fight response, and it's pushing back because it thinks you're going to hit it. And it can't help it. It's automatic. That dog is not choosing to behave that way. And then you say to them, okay, I want you to think about what you would do if you saw another child behaving that way. Your society might tell you they have power, but that's because your society is making a big mistake. They're not looking at science, because that child doesn't have any power. That child that's bullying is waving a red flag that they're in extreme fear, they feel deeply threatened, and they come from some form of trauma, whether it's neglect or abuse on the part of the adults in their lives. They need another adult, like a teacher, to get right in there to help them. Okay, let's go to another animal. Let's pretend that you come up against a deer, and the deer is there and it looks at you, and the second it takes a look at you, it starts to back up, and then it turns around and it runs. Those are the kids that you come up to and they flee and they run away and they laugh and they make it seem like you have a problem, but you don't really, because you're not running away. You're just being a stable, healthy, happy, mammal that comes from a loving mammal family. And you don't have any issues because you're not running away. You're just trying to socially connect and interact and be part of community, which are all signs of good mental health in a mammal and in a child. But the deer thinks you're a hunter and it's terrified and it's running away, and maybe it's laughing, but that's a very nervous reaction. That's a kind of hysterical, nervous, unstable reaction. Again, the deer is waving a red flag on the playground or in the locker-lined hallway that it's afraid. You threaten it, you make it afraid. It's actually a sign of your power, and it's okay to just hold that power with compassion. Let's go to the third animal. You have an animal that is a rabbit. Every time it sees you, it just completely goes still. And it actually thinks, or a reptile will do this as well, it will play dead, it will go still and hope that as it's playing dead, you just walk away from it because you don't think it's worth any value or interaction. That's what humans do. Our behavior is identical to fight, to flight, and to freeze. And then there's one final one that you might see even friends do or bystanders do, and that's called fawn. And you'll see this if you watch geopolitical interactions on the news. You will see adults who will fawn all over the threatening, angry, hurtful, damaging power person because they're so afraid for their survival, and they want the benefits of being aligned or identifying with the aggressor. So fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, children can understand it, and adults in the workplace and organizational psychology should understand it. All of us are automatically not choosing our behaviors, not that we don't hold adults in particular accountable for them, but our system is automatically feeling so much anxiety and threat and stress that it's activating a bunch of behaviors that some people might not even be conscious of. But once we train children, they will take these lessons. They have to learn them over and over and over again. Every time there's an encounter, the kids need to be sat down with the teacher, with a parent, and we need to just get that vocabulary going. Okay, how is the person behaving? So they're lashing out, they're doing all these things. What is that like? Oh, the angry dog, the threatened dog. Right, okay, we understand that. That person's in fight response. How do you think we could help them? How can we get someone to calm down? And then there are all kinds of really interesting, powerful neuroscience ways to get someone to calm down. And then we train kids to do that, and we train adults to do that. You shouldn't be afraid when someone behaves this way. They don't have any power. You should feel really sad, and you should feel a strong impulse to get them the help they need.
Yep, love that. I love that.
This is absolutely fascinating. So, Dr. Fraser, you have an incredible background with your PhD in comparative literature, and really being able to pull from different disciplines, pulling them together. And my next question from your area of expertise, when it comes to maybe policy ideas to maybe better support those victims, or to really help when it comes to the topic of bullying to protect those victims, what is maybe some ideas that you could add or that you think are perhaps missing right now?
Yeah, one of the things that I found myself writing about in the Gaslit Brain, because I wasn't just looking at the bullying. So I'll give you the subtitle of the book. So the book is The Gaslit Brain, and then the subtitle sort of says it all. Protect your brain. So exactly what we're talking about, Courtney. Protect your brain from the lies of bullying, gaslighting, and institutional complicity. Now, what I was really trying to unpack was, why do institutions protect the perpetrator and sort of cast to the side the victims? It doesn't make any sense. And even worse, why does the institution try to scapegoat and get rid of and drive out the whistleblower, the person that's the truth teller? Why do they protect the liars and boot the truth teller? Was really one of the big questions that I was trying to unpack. And I gotta say, the brain science on this is so unbelievable. I just can't even begin to tell you. It's too complicated to get into right now, but the brain science is unbelievable on this. So what I came up with was, do you guys know that expression DARVO from Dr. Jennifer Freyd? DARVO? No? Okay. It's an organizational thing that happens a lot of times when bullying happens. So watch for it next time. So it stands for denial. That'll be the first organizational response. Denial. The bullying is not happening. It's in your imagination. It's this, it's that. You're hysterical. You're too sensitive. You think you have special privileges, blah, blah, blah. They do the same thing, like denial. So that's the D for DARVO. The next one is, if they can't make you agree, they're gaslighting you to agree that it didn't really happen. If you refuse to agree and you're like, no, here's all my documentation, here's the evidence, here's 14 people that are recording the exact same conduct, then they have to go into attack. Because you would think that they would want to solve the problem, but they don't. And there's complex brain science reasons why. So the next thing they do is attack. Once they attack you and they say, actually, it's your fault. It's what they oftentimes did. I mean, they still do now, but really heavy in the past. If a woman was raped or suffered a sexual assault, they would say it was your fault. You wore that dress. They would say, it's your fault. You went to that club. You went to his house. It's your fault. You drank alcohol. You wanted it. Actually, gaslighting. It's like, wait a second, I'm going to tell you why it happened. You wanted to be raped. You consented to it. Now you're complaining. That was literally what we had in courtrooms. So that gives you a really good example of DARVO. And what happens in that moment is you get denial, you get attack, and then you get reversal. Reversal of the offender, I call them perpetrator, the offender and the victim. So all of a sudden you've got a rapist and the person they raped. And by the time you're done with the court situation, the rapist is walking free and the victim is being sort of humiliated and made to feel responsible for the violation that they suffered. So that's a really good example. You can imagine that, how that plays out in the workplace. I argue that we could do it differently. And the way we could do it differently is, I think one of the most powerful things out there is an anonymous survey. The workplace, the university, the school, check in on your sports organizations, your coaches, and you do an anonymous survey twice a year. The data is collected by an independent body, and they put it into a form that doesn't have any names or any kind of identifying features, and you get to see patterns. And you'll see, guaranteed, if you have an abusive individual, they don't do it just once. It's never random. It's a pattern. It's their own psychological torment and trauma, and they will do it over and over and over again. There will be multiple victims. But as soon as you make it an anonymous survey, they can't retaliate. And I mean, geopolitically, we're all watching right now the power of retaliation. If you try and stand up to these highly abusive individuals, they will retaliate. And that's how they keep control and power, how they have coercion and control, because no one will dare to stand up to them, because they're going to make it 10,000 times worse for you if you do. But if they don't know who's speaking up, and there's actually a number of people speaking up about them, then all of a sudden they have no power anymore. And think of how, Courtney, think how it would change their behavior. If you think that there's going to be a survey coming up, you are not going to behave in the same way. You might even leave the institution and try to find a place that doesn't do surveys, because the survey is your greatest enemy, because it's a truth-telling device that, so the thing that the perpetrator always says is, oh, I'm going to be wrongly accused and this is unfair and blah, blah, blah. Fair enough. That's a good point. if you have one accuser, that might work. Because how can you tell? He said, she said, she said, she said. How can you tell? But the survey will show patterns. The survey will show multiple victims because these people can't stop themselves. It's very obsessive compulsive behavior. They have to do it. They do it for relief and they do it over and over again, like an addiction to a substance. And so as soon as you've got an anonymous survey every 6 months, you expose the pattern. And then they have nothing to argue with.
Thank you.
That's so powerful. I love that.
Now, Dr. Fraser, you had talked about your forthcoming book, The Gaslit Brain, and on all this gaslighting behavior. And I hear this term more and more, and I'm very excited to read your upcoming book because I think this is so powerful. And please tell us some more about that and when we can be able to read this incredible book, because I absolutely know it's going to be fantastic.
Well, it's one of those unusual situations where the book really speaks to what is happening geopolitically in the world. So it is going to be interesting. It comes out on November the 4th. You can pre-order it now off Amazon. It's like up and running, so people can get it. Basically the outlet. So let me just say quickly what gaslighting is for people that, that term is getting used a lot. I use it in a very specific way in the book. So you guys have heard for sure people talking about medical gaslighting. Women talk about medical gaslighting. And the reason they do is because they go in to see a doctor. The doctor says, oh no, you're just suffering from some anxiety. All these symptoms you're talking about, it's in your head. Here, I'm going to give you an anti-anxiety pill. And lo and behold, the woman has cancer. And so women are super mad about this, and they feel like the doctor's trying to tell them what's really going on with them, and it's inaccurate. Now, I don't use that kind of gaslighting in my book. And the reason being is because I only talk about gaslighting when it's intentional, and the person who's doing it has an agenda. The doctor does not have, 99.9% of the time, they don't have an agenda, they're making a mistake. There's no benefit for a doctor to misdiagnose a patient, ever. In fact, it opens them up to a lot of dangerous lawsuits and loss of reputation and all kinds of things. There's no advantage to it, there's no agenda. What's wrong with doctors, well, that sounds very judgmental. What I mean is, what doctors are suffering from, and I'm not excusing it, is a massive lack of research. As we all know, female bodies are not researched. And so they make terrible mistakes because they don't have any real knowledge. And because they're doctors, they're not trained to say, I'm really unsure about what's wrong with you here. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to have to do a bunch of got to do a deep dive into your symptoms. They don't say those things because they're trained to be authorities. And we don't want to go to our doctors and hear our doctors say, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. It's like, what? So there's this kind of dynamic. I don't do that kind of gaslighting. I do the kind of gaslighting where the person is very specifically trying to manipulate your relationship to yourself, your relationship to how much you trust yourself, your relationship to your understanding of your dynamic with reality and with truth and with other people. I work on gaslighters that very intentionally get into your head to scramble your brain and your self-trust and self-confidence. And it's unbelievable what these people do. And what's fascinating is we have a tendency in society to think, oh, if someone falls for gaslighting, it's because they're stupid or they're ignorant or they're gullible. None of that is true. If I sat a gaslighter psychopath across the table from a psychiatric expert who specializes in psychopathology, it would take 30 minutes before the psychiatric expert starts to doubt their own reality. That's how good these guys are. They are masters. All of us are at risk. All of us are susceptible. You can't be educated enough. And so I have 4 case studies at the start of the book, and I chose the most untouchable people to do the research on, high-level executives in America, top counterterrorism specialists in the UK, law professor in Canada. I chose the top of the top. And simultaneously, these people are being bullied and gaslit and driven out of their careers in the most appalling way you've ever read. You don't get more privileged, more educated, more talented, and they were susceptible, which means we're all susceptible.
I mean, it's hideous, and it is fascinating as well that how these people. I mean, actually researching this nowadays a lot about this, especially narcissism and this the manipulators and gaslighting. And I came across this one study when someone was interviewing the narcissist and how they actually gaslighting people. And it's and they actually mentioned in that interview that these people actually look for empaths, or the ones who are really kind-hearted, or those who actually believe in love, and they say and those are their targets. So I completely agree with you that we are all susceptible to this gaslighting, and we should be aware. First of all, first thing is awareness, that how we are, if we get more knowledge and about this, and what are their techniques, then only we'll be able to actually tackle them and protect ourselves from them. So thank you so much for sharing this amazing information. I really love it.
Yeah, Ambreen, I think it's important the focus, the zeroing in that you're doing on interpersonal or romantic relationships, because really the harm that happens, I mean, the part that really gets me is, and it isn't, I don't know how much it's talked about, I don't know if that's what you're going to work on, but there, as you all know, there's been a huge resurgence in or continuation that's intensifying in femicide and in and domestic violence and interpersonal violence. And, gaslighting plays a huge role in that. And where I think it's particularly tragic is a victim who thinks that they're in love and then has children with someone who's a manipulator. And then there's all of this violence gets unleashed after the honeymoon or the love bombing phase. And I don't feel that that's talked about enough in these circles. And I hope that's what you're going to really work on, because it's critical. It's life-saving. I mean, that kind of work is life-saving.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is really, getting my attention these days, and I've been working on this, especially that how it's this kind of gaslighting and manipulation is not only in this the personal relationships, it's like workplace and everything. So what I've been studying these kind of patterns, that how it impacts our brain is devastating, because the person who goes through gaslighting is actually the entire brain rewires, because they actually, the way they twist the reality, it is I don't know, I would say that it's fascinating the way they do it. It's completely destroy the other person. So the only thing is that what I believe is that we just need to create more awareness about this, that so people get to know what's happening to them, so they can take action. Because the thing is that when they surround, they make their reality in a way, they keep I would say that it's weave their reality just around their heads, so they don't have any option to go outside and see that what's happening, and they start self-doubting, they start harming themselves. So it is one of the, say, very important thing that we should talk more about this, especially on these forums, or anywhere we get the chance to make other people, at least make them aware that what's happening. So yeah, thank you so much for what you're doing. It is much needed in the society and its current time.
Yeah,
I had a question just with what would be the difference between bullying behavior and gaslighting behavior? Do they overlap? Or what would you say is the difference if we're trying to identify? Or is the gaslighting person being a bully in its simplest form? Or, just curious what you would say to distinguish the two.
Yeah, that's a really important distinction. I just wrote an article about this for Psychology Today, and I said that bullying tries to turn other people against you. So, you are bullying someone, they always want an audience that's always designed for the herd or the mob, the group of bystanders, the participants. You don't bully people in private, because it's not really an interpersonal, authentic relationship. It's a display of power. So bullying is all about making other people turn against you. Gaslighting is when the bullying, abusive individual tries to turn you against yourself. That's where it differs. So the bully says, oh, Jen is such a jerk and she comes from the wrong family and she has the wrong look and she doesn't wear the right clothes and she doesn't laugh in a way that I hate the way she laughs. I mean, they'll come up with anything, right? They use any material, random things that they can find, or they use really entrenched systems of, misogyny and racism and anti-Semitism, homophobia, anti-Islamicism. They use the same old, tired and true, boring things. They lack imagination, but they'll find anything wrong with you. And so they're trying to do a big display of, I'm so powerful, I'm the judge, I'm the arbiter of what is good and what's not. If I don't like your laugh, then the group doesn't like your laugh, and it's because they're afraid and all these other different things. So that's bullying. And it can take a million different forms, as we all know. Gaslighting is different. Gaslighting is when it's just me and my target. And I'm like, you were saying that I was bullying you, but, I think it's that you're too sensitive. I think actually you're trying to hurt me by saying that my behavior isn't okay. And it's just because you don't understand. And you misinterpreted the whole thing and you're hysterical. I actually think you're mentally unstable. I think you got a screw loose. I think you're deranged. I think you're a lunatic. And go back to Ambreen's point, if you're empathic and you have integrity and you're self-reflective and you have emotional intelligence, the first thing you do is you turn your gaze inward and you go, what is it that I did that is making someone speak to me that way? Oh, I'm being ghosted by a colleague. It must be because I made a mistake. I better do a scan of all the things I said wrong, or I acted insensitively, or maybe I was too flippant or too boring, or it's clearly something about me because nobody would maltreat me that way. That's how the empath reacts. So to Ambreen's point, it's a huge liability in gaslighting and bullying situations because, and this is, I do a lot of work on writing about, so I write a Substack on this now on gaslighting, and I constantly am advising anyone who will listen to me to say, don't look inward. This is when this happens to you, you need to laser focus on the perpetrator and don't take your eyes off them, and write down everything they say and write down how it affected you and so on, because this has nothing, don't take any responsibility. It has nothing to do with you. You are a blank screen. You are a mirror and they are using you. So if you don't want to be exploited, you don't want to be used, then start looking at them. And going back, Courtney, it was you that asked a question around what do we do in terms of policy? What do we do in terms of organizational culture? One of the things that we can do is really stop looking at the victims and saying to ourselves, oh, we need to get them help. Our victims need counseling. We need to repair them. We need to heal them. They're not broken. If they've spoken up and said, look, this stuff is going down, stop worrying about them. They'll get the help they need. They're healthy individuals. We need to have the organization do 180 degrees and take a really hard look at the perpetrator. What's going on in the perpetrator's life? What kind of help do they need? What sort of counseling do they need? Treat it like an addiction or substance abuse. If you can't come to work and be drunk, then you can't come to work and hurt other people. Plain and simple. It's not a big conundrum. It's like, no, you can't come to work high and you can't come to work and humiliate people. It's just how we work in our organization. So if you do have a problem, you know what? We think you're talented. We think you're worthy of work. We're going to help you get the help you need. 6 months off, intensive training. We can rehabilitate you. We know brains can get better, but you got to put in the work, and sorry, you can't behave this way. Plain and simple. I love that.
This is so intriguing. I have to ask, first off, congratulations, congratulations on your book coming out. Can't wait to read that. And my question to you is, as you were writing the book, I'm just always fascinated upon maybe people's thoughts as you're writing the book. Did anything arise, or maybe did you pull anything from other disciplines that made you think, oh, wow, that's really interesting. I may dive into that more than when you first started the book?
Well, that's a great question. So the book is, I stayed laser focused for the most part anyways, as much as I could. I'm a very literary person, so next thing you know, I'm like drawing on the Genesis and the Bible. And then I'm talking about Milton and I've got a few words to say about Dante. It's just like, would you stop? So I couldn't resist. But where I got really interested was in one of the neuroscience. So I use the research, the extensive research of these brilliant neuroscientific brains. And I looked at what they learned in the lab. And then I took what they learned in the lab and I tried to apply it to workplace culture and to why in society we're suffering this way, in geopolitical culture. Like, why is this happening and how can we fix it? So really just basic, like classic educator stuff. So this book is trauma preventative. It's to say what Ambreen was saying, which is like awareness. If we need to stop saying, oh, we're trauma informed, we would never say, oh, we're fire informed. We let kids in school and we let adults in the workplace get really badly burned. And then we've got all of these ways that we heal them as best we can after they've suffered. This trauma informed makes me crazy. It's like information is not going to save anybody. Let's prevent it. So the book is very trauma preventative. But in the final chapter of the book, to your point, Courtney, I hit all this material on really that speaks to the climate crisis and how our maltreatment, our bullying, our gaslighting around the warming of the planet and the unleashing of environmental destruction is so stoppable. It's once you look at it through the gaslighting lens, and once you look at it through all the different chapters of the book that lead you to the moment where you're like, oh my God, it's a brain malfunction. We are not, because we don't understand our brains, is why we're destroying our planet. And so for me, it's my favorite chapter in the whole book. And it opens up the door for all the other people that will step in and say, you know what, this model is a way for us to talk about climate change and the warming of the planet and what we need to do right now urgently to change it, because we can change it. So yeah, that was my most sort of eye-opening like chapters.
Thank you.
So amazing. Jen, Dr. Fraser, I feel like I can talk with you all day. I absolutely love chatting with you. You have such amazing points, just amazing research. Anyone who has not read The Bullied Brain, Jen's book that is out, please do so. It's an incredible read. And also make sure you sign up to pre-order her Gaslit Brain that's coming out again November of this year, 2025. And thank you so much, Jen. Is there anything else you would like to share with us before we wrap up today?
No, I'm just really thankful. I love talking with all of you. It was a great honor and a pleasure. And I think your Energized Thinking podcast is a great idea. These types of discussions have important information and create, critical thinking communities and sharing of ideas. And it's like a little think tank. And so it's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
It was such an amazing discussion. Thank you so much for sharing such amazing knowledge on this important topic. Thank you so much.
Dr. Fraser, thank you so much. Just to kind of reiterate what Valerie and Ambreen said, your passion truly shines through with these topics, and we were absolutely thrilled to have you as the first guest expert. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you all. Thanks so much, guys. Bye.